5:21 the time here in London, over in Washington at 12:21. This is the perfect moment for the President of the United States to get going. And I'll tell you what, for the next 4 years at around this time every day, the President is going to say or do something that not only upsets the world order as it's been established since about 1948, but certainly upsets the running order of this programme. Get to your calls in just a few moments, because first...
We must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
That was Trump's Defence Secretary Hegseth about 2 hours ago. Now we've just heard the news breaking that Trump and Putin have spoken and negotiations to end the war in Ukraine are beginning immediately. Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent. Decode the president's press release for us, Simon. Good afternoon.
Well, it's a very good afternoon to you, Tom. It's a very, very big deal. This is Donald Trump now making his move on Ukraine. Remember that during the election campaign, he said he could end the war in Ukraine on day one of his presidency. Well, we are now day 22 of his presidency, and he has engaged in a 90-minute telephone call, according to the Russians, with President Vladimir Putin. And in a statement that Donald Trump has published to his own Truth social media platform, he says that they have agreed that negotiations aimed at ending the war are going to begin immediately. President Putin, he says, even used my very strong campaign motto of common sense. We both believe very strongly in it. We agreed to work together very closely, including visiting each other's nations.
Wow.
And he says that he has instructed his team immediately to begin the process of negotiation, and now is phoning at this moment, he says, President Vladimir Zelenskyy in Kiev to let him know about the outcome of the conversation that he's had with President Putin. I mean, you might think that he might have called Vladimir Zelenskyy first before announcing the outcome of the conversation with Vladimir Putin to the world. What is interesting about this is that he says he has asked Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the CIA Director John Ratcliffe, the National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who just came back from Russia,
guy,
having secured the freedom of an American who was jailed for drug offences there. And now we understand the Americans are about to release a Russian convicted cyber criminal in return. Those are the four people, he says, that are going to lead the negotiations, which is curious because previously he had named retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg as the man that was going to be his key man on the issue of negotiating peace in Ukraine. So this is now moving up to the highest echelons of the Trump administration, and he clearly wants to get on with it.
And we got a bit more of an outline from Trump's defense secretary before this release of this details of this phone call with President Putin about what peace in Ukraine might look like, and Hegseth saying that a return to pre-2014 borders is unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's very much been the thinking of the Trump world people all along, that ultimately they were going to encourage, maybe some would say force, Volodymyr Zelenskyy to accept a peace in which Russia gets to keep Crimea, which, of course, it annexed and invaded during the Obama administration, and now will get to keep some chunks of eastern Ukraine around Donetsk and Luhansk. So the question, of course, will be what sort of security guarantees will President Trump seek from Russia in return for that? I mean, I know that Pete Hegseth has also indicated today that what is really driving all of this is a desire by the Trump administration to stop having to focus national security resources on Europe. As you know, he wants 5% GDP being spent by NATO members on defence. He wants to be freed from involvement in European affairs in order, he says, to focus on Chinese expansionism in the Indo-Pacific. And that's also fueling all of this, both from Hegseth and from President Trump today.
Simon, really appreciate it as always. Thank you. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent, will be back on this programme Friday, at the latest on Friday, 10 to 6 with his not to miss American Week. Don't even know how it's going to pan out. We've still got 2 days to go. 03456060973. The thought that comes most immediately to mind as Trump begins these negotiations with Putin is we're probably going to have to prepare, or at least the Prime Minister is going to have to prepare, to put British boots on the ground in Ukraine to attempt to protect the peace. Because the Americans have said, or the Trump Americans have said pretty categorically, they will not allow US soldiers to be involved in the keeping of that peace. I suspect there is going to be a decision not too far away for the Prime Minister about whether or not British troops will go into Ukraine in order to do a peacekeeping exercise.